Hello, my name is Lance Cummings, and I'm going to talk a bit about how introductions can help you develop argumentative papers. Of course, you've probably been talking a lot about logos, about how to construct the reasoning behind your argument, as well as how to use research, and these certainly are very important. But remember, arguing is not just about logos. Pathos and ethos are still very important. As I'm sure you've heard before, you wouldn't just walk into a coffee shop and start making an argument. No, you would introduce yourself first. In other words, making an argument is highly contextual. You need to have a rhetorical stance, or situate yourself with your audience. Thinking more intentionally about your introduction can help you do this. One can see the introduction as containing all the elements of the rhetorical triangle. For example, an introduction should grab your audience's attention, creating a kind of emotional connection, or using pathos. An introduction should also establish your persona, or how you're going to present yourself to your audience. Or in other words, developing an ethos. And finally, your introduction should introduce your purpose, or make your claim. And of course, this ties to logos. First of all, introductions usually have what is often called an intention getter. This is simply an introductory element that helps draw your audience into your essay and gets them thinking about your topic or its context. Here are just a few common strategies people have used. Sometimes we like to start off with a narrative or a story, or imagine scenarios. Sometimes it's nice just to start off with some interesting facts or ideas. Or you might think about how your audience needs to have a little bit more context about your inquiry or the claim that you're going to make. And finally, you might want to quote somebody or talk about what other people are saying about your topic or inquiry. What other strategies have you used or seen used in writing? Introductions are also where you present yourself to your audience and set the tone for the rest of the essay. You might call this developing your ethos or your rapport with the audience. How you develop your ethos will impact many choices you make in your essay, the first of which you will make in your introduction. For example, will you be informal or formal? But remember that there are different grades and shades of formality and informality. It might take some fine-tuning. Ethos also impacts what kind of words you're going to use throughout the essay, or what kind of sentences. And finally, your introduction should clue your reader in on the purpose of your essay or the claim you are arguing. Often this is done with a thesis. A good thesis will answer these questions. What is your claim? How will you demonstrate your claim, or what steps will you go through to show us the truth of your claim? This is often called a thesis map. And why is your claim important to your audience? This is often called the so what factor. Your audience shouldn't have to ask themselves why they are reading your essay or why it is important. Also, your thesis should be unique. If I could write a bazillion essays around the same thesis, then the thesis is not unique enough and probably needs to be developed. One way to develop a thesis is to be more specific. For example, use more specific words or phrases. Clarify something you're saying in your thesis. Add a reason why your thesis is important to your audience. Or say something about how you're going to demonstrate your claim. Now that we've talked a little bit about what introductions can do, let's take a look at a few essays in the CCM to see how other students have used these strategies. This essay on sustainable energy by Chloe Beck is a good example of establishing a kind of ethos and drawing the audience in with an attention getter. She starts off her essay with some interesting context, but introduces it in a fun way. Last year at Miami University, there was an energy stir. No, this is not about the Starbucks and King Cafe or the high-energy Zumba classes at the rec center. This event involved students protesting. So there we see that the writer's persona is going to have a little bit of a light wit about her. And also she mentions specific things at Miami University that are going to connect to Miami University students or people who are part of the Miami University community. For example, the Starbucks and King Cafe and the Zumba classes at the rec center. This introduction shows a very specific audience. Now let's take a look at her thesis. She says, considering the coal plant is a major contributor to Miami's carbon footprint and poses direct health problems, it is probably for the best that the university is choosing to move away from coal and toward a more sustainable form of energy. So we see here what the purpose of the essay is for students in the Miami University community to consider how the university can be more sustainable. And she's going to demonstrate this by talking about the environment or the idea of carbon footprints, by also talking about health problems that are associated with carbon footprints. And finally, she's probably going to talk about the different ways the university is or can move more towards sustainable forms of energy. So we have a very clear idea of where this essay is going. Okay, now let's take a look at the award-winning essay, Internet Filters Hinder Student Research by Molly Welch. She starts out like this. Throughout America, school district administrators are trying to protect their students from inappropriate and distracting websites on the internet during the school day. And then she even goes on and cites research that backs up this idea. This gives the audience some context and also some proof for some of the warrants that her claim is going to use. And we also get a strong sense that her audience is for school district administrators, even though she's talking about them in the third person. She made the decision not to address her audience in second person or with the pronoun you, because oftentimes if we're arguing with somebody and we use the pronoun you, it can actually be a little bit off-putting. So she talks about her audience or the people she's trying to convince in third person. And she also gives enough details to draw them in to her essay. Now her thesis makes a clear claim about what she's going to argue and also shows us that she's arguing to education administrators. She says, due to this problem, education administrators across the United States should release internet filters in their schools and libraries so their students and faculty are not restricted from conducting successful research during the school day. So she says what she's going to claim, that they should release internet filters and why that's important so that students and faculty can do more successful research. And it's also clear, even though she doesn't mention it in her thesis, she says due to this problem, she's referring further up in the paragraph to the problem of different laws that restrict research filters, that this is going to be a major part of how she constructs her argument. Now you may want to take a look at more essays in the print CCM and online. What other ways have students used introductions rhetorically? Now here are just a few more thoughts about how introductions can help you build your essay. First of all, don't get stuck in a rut. There is no formula that will work every time and in every context. Try different strategies and look at what other people do in their essays and try those. It's also a good idea to think about how both the introduction and conclusion can frame your essay. Is there a way you can continue or complete your introduction in the conclusion? Or maybe you can just refer back to something you said in the introduction. Like a window frame, this helps create closure, especially when you have difficulty writing conclusions. But don't forget the rest of the essay. There is more than just a beginning and an end, or a top and the bottom. You have to support your rhetorical stance throughout the essay, once it's been established in the introduction. Without this support, your whole essay can fall down rhetorically. And finally, don't stop thinking about your audience after the introduction. You can use the same rhetorical stance to help connect the different parts of your essay together. Remind your audience why your argument is important, and integrate sources into your own thoughts. This is often called voice, or your particular way of speaking to a specific audience. Your audience wants to hear what you think, So keep that in mind. All right, now let's recap. Introductions play an important rhetorical role. They help you grab your audience's attention or build emotional connections. Introductions help introduce your persona or build rapport with your audience. And finally, introductions should show your purpose to your audience. Paying attention to these introductory elements can help you set up your rhetorical stance and build a paper that truly reaches your intended audience. Thank you for your attention and happy writing.